Everyone experiences their first night, and it's up to each person to decide which night they consider as their first. My first night with her. I quietly asked her, "Have you been with any other men?" The innocent girl blushed and shook her head. "You are my first." She tightly gripped my fingertips with her small palm. "My name is Mike Harper, just turned 32 this year. I'm still single but don't lack anything. Highly educated, tall, handsome with a high income. That's how others see my profile. I take pride in my job and don't lack women who are just for fun. I work at a high-end watch store that deals with luxury brand watches. It's located on a main street. There are several other stores in the chain. Among them, I'm the youngest manager. It's not the flagship store, but it's consistently the highest performing store in the chain. I've been the top salesperson for 5 consecutive years. I have a huge lead over my colleagues. I've been used to jealousy and spite since my school days. My reputation at work is a jerk who gets the job done. While every day is a series of tension to not be undercut, I consider these days fulfilling. I met her on a weekend. It was a Sunday evening, around the time people start heading home. That day, I was annoyed because a customer who had made a reservation canceled last minute. This customer was someone who always spent a lot of money, someone who supported my sales. The reason for the cancellation was frustrating. I felt he didn't provide enough special treatment with me. Apparently, he had been watching from a distance as I served other customers. In simple terms, they were acting up to jealousy. Thinking about this missed sales gives me a headache. There are more than enough people itching to pull me down. I was trying to keep my frustration from showing as much as possible. I didn't want my colleagues to think I was rattled. There were a few customers in the store, each being attended to by other clerks. And then, pushing the heavy door open, a seemingly out-of-place customer entered. She was a girl with long hair loosely curled, giving off a feminine impression. She could pass for a college student, but she also looked underage. Her skin was pure white, and she was wearing a bit of makeup. Her maxi skirt was khaki-colored with large pockets like cargo pants. Beneath the skirt was black chiffon and lace, fluffy and airy. Peeking out from the hem of her skirt were short Dr. Martens boots. Her top was a gray hoodie. For a moment, she caught the eyes of the clerks and customers in the store. That makes sense. She was incredibly beautiful. So much so that some customers started whispering, "Is she a celebrity?" She walked towards me, seemingly unaware of the attention she was drawing. Probably because I was the only one free among the staff. She smiled at me over the showcase. I responded with a professional smile of my own. In my mind, I thought she must be just window shopping. There are not many items in the store that a high school or college student like her could afford. Usually, they ask for the price, drop their shoulders, and then leave. Feeling irritable, I started to serve her somewhat teasingly. Looking for something. As I asked, she looked straight into my eyes, her face showing a hint of surprise. Then she replied in a small voice, "I'm looking for a gift for my father," with a slightly oppressed smile. It seems his birthday is coming up and she wants to give him a watch. I didn't think there was a watch she could afford with the money she would have, but I thought it would be a good way to kill time until the closing time. "What kind of watch are you looking for?" I don't really know much about watches. My father is turning 60 this year. Do you have any recommendations?" she asked timidly. Her small voice sounded like that of a little squirrel. "Your father would be happy with any watch, if you're the one to choose," I said. At my words, she gave a small nod as if being pushed from behind. She began to look carefully at the watches in the showcase as she slowly walked around. Every now and then, she asked questions like, "What's the difference between this watch and that one?" She really seemed to know nothing about watches. She might not be able to choose anything when she sees the price. Then, she stopped for a watch with a beautiful design on the dial. "It's incredibly beautiful, isn't it?" What she pointed out was a watch from a luxury brand. It's a beautiful watch that incorporates traditional Japanese craftsmanship. Her eyes sparkle as she looks at the watch. I took it out of the showcase to show her. "I'm torn between this one and the one over there." The direction she pointed was another showcase from a different luxury watch brand. Watches priced in the range of $50,000 and $100,000 were on display. Certainly not a price range she could afford. I was slightly irritated, thinking she was just a window shopper after all. "All of these watches are quite expensive," I told her, implying that she probably couldn't afford any of them. She didn't seem to notice my snide remark, and she innocently smiled back at me. "Which one do you prefer, buddy?" Being suddenly called buddy, I was taken aback. I'd never been referred to as buddy before, as no one seemed to feel that close to me. She stared at me intently, noticing that I was unable to hide my surprise. "Oh, I prefer the watch with the exquisite craftsmanship." Even though I was planning to recommend the more expensive one, I ended up honestly suggesting the one I liked. Despite being cheaper than the other one, this watch was also priced at $11,000. But when she heard my response, she seemed satisfied and nodded. "Then, I'll take this watch, please." She said it casually as if she were purchasing some cute trinket. "Could you gift wrap it for me, too?" She tilted her head, and I silently nodded in response. "Ma'am, the payment, it's going to be quite a hefty sum." I gently showed her the price tag. Showing her the hefty price tag somehow made me feel a little guilty. She checked the price tag, then took off her small backpack and pulled out a paper bag. She pulled out a bundle of bills still strapped together and offered it to me, as casually as if she was taking out a bag of cookies. The $1,000 bills at the end of the stack came out of the backpack front pocket. "I believe this should cover it. Can you please check?" Her words jolted me out of my stunned silence. I told her it would take some time to wrap the item and led her to a sofa seat. A female staff member, who had just finished serving other customers, offered her a drink menu. Suddenly receiving such special services, she looked somewhat uncomfortable. I had the impression that there were still more bills in her paper bag. 10 minutes later, she carefully received a gift box with the watch in it and left the store. I was able to confirm that she was not a minor from the customer's profile information, but why she was carrying around such a large amount of money remained a mystery. This was how I met her, Catherine Summers. The next weekend after I first met Catherine, I believe it was around the same time, she appeared, pushing the heavy door of the shop open with both hands. She looked around inside the store as if she was looking for someone. I quietly approached her and spoke. "Welcome back. Thank you for your visit the other day." She had been obscured by the door, so didn't notice I was there. She jumped a little upon my words. Her reaction was adorable, like a startled squirrel. I came to get a birthday present for my brother today." Her voice trailed off after the initial burst of energy. She shyly looked down. "So, it's your brother's birthday?" "Yes, my brother's turning 32. He loves the outdoors. What kind of watch do you think he would like?" In response to my comment, she lifts her head and tells me earnestly, I didn't tease her at all today. I introduced a few items to her. She listened intently to my explanation, carefully considering the watches. "I'll take this one," she said, smiling contentedly. I was impressed by her taste. Despite claiming not to know much about watches, she was able to find the best one. This watch is also quite expensive. The watch was a high-end piece, costing nearly $29,000. I don't know who this girl is, but this price is excessive. I thought she would give up on buying it and switch to a different watch. However, she took out a paper bag from the small backpack she was carrying just like the last time, and handed me a bundle of bills, still bound. She held out the bundle so casually, I almost didn't recognize what it was. I took the bills on a velvet-lined tray and checked to make sure they weren't counterfeit as I counted. Of course, they were all real and crisp. She was sitting in comfortably on the sofa, just like the last time. Who on earth is she? And surprisingly, she appeared at the store at the same time the next weekend. This is insane. This time, she said it was a birthday present for her mom. It doesn't seem true at all. Where is she getting the money to buy expensive watches every week? I can't help but worry if the money is from a dangerous source. Have you considered getting something other than a watch for your mother's birthday? I suggested gently, trying not to offend her. I thought her parents might be worried if she spends so much money every week. At my suggestion, she looked a bit sad. With a deflated voice, she asked, "So you figured out the birthday was a lie?" She hung her head in seeming shame. It almost felt like I was bullying her. I could feel the sharp glances from my colleagues. So the birthday story was a lie, I thought. I'm sorry for lying, but I couldn't think of anything else. She bowed her head deeply. I panicked when the customer bowed to me. "You don't have to do that." I hastily touched her shoulder, and she looked up and locked her eyes onto mine. "Is there a way for me to see you without buying a watch? I've never been shown such direct affection before." I lost my words for a moment. In response to my silence, she continues, "It was love at first sight. I've never felt this way before. If it's a nuisance, I'll hold back, but is there a way I can just keep being close to you?" Apparently, she had been visiting the store every weekend just to see me. Her thin shoulders were trembling slightly, perhaps due to nervousness. "You're welcome here anytime, with or without a purchase. We're always waiting for you." Half professional, half genuine. It felt different from the usual courtesy I show to customers. There was a strange feeling about my own words. "Thank you so much." Her tense expression softened instantly. From that day on, she started visiting the store every weekend. She would pop in without interrupting my work, exchanging a few words with me. She made friends with the store employees and would chat happily with them when I was busy. One usual weekend at the usual time, she peeked in through the door. "Hello, Mike. Welcome, Miss Summers." We've been repeating the same exchange for several weeks now. With her usual small backpack on, she greeted me with a beaming smile. The other employees would call out, "Welcome." She would respond to each greeting by nodding her head. The next moment, stacks of bills rustle and fall onto the floor. It seems that the zipper of her backpack was becoming more open, and its contents slipped out as she moved through the store. 3 bundles of money with bands around them and loose $100 bills scatter across the floor, making me nervous. She was checking her backpack, saying, I picked up all the money and handed it to her. "Do you always carry around this much cash? It's dangerous." I unintentionally sounded like scolding her. She took the money I gathered in both hands. "Thank you. I had a huge win today. Usually, I have much less," she said, smiling brightly. Why does she always carry around so much cash? The initial question I had for her came back to me. "Hey, how come you have all these money?" I wasn't speaking to a customer anymore. I felt like an older brother worried about his little sister. In response to my question, she gave me a puzzled look, as if it's completely natural to carry around a lot of money on weekends. "It's poker. There was a match with a real good player today, and the results were unexpected." I had a hard time processing her words. The words poker and the girl in front of me didn't seem to fit together. What she pulled out of her backpack was a card player magazine, wrapped with a piece of cloth. There were markings that looked like she had passionately learned the strategies. I was speechless at the sheer contrast. She looked worriedly at me as I stood there, stunned. Our eyes eventually met. Her eyes were a bit watery. I was taken aback and froze. "Are you disappointed? Do you hate me now?" Her slender shoulders were shaking, seemingly tense. I remember seeing these shaking shoulders before. At this moment, I felt a strong need to reassure her, who was always so sincere to me. "I'm not disappointed. How about we go out for dinner next time?" Upon hearing my words, her tears quickly retreated. A broad smile appeared on her face, and she expressed her joy by jumping up to stand on her feet. "Promise, don't just say such a thing." I wrote down my phone number and handed it to her, who was so excited already. I knew I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I hoped they would let it slide just this once. In fact, the other employees seemed to be turning a blind eye. She accepted the note with my number as if it were a treasure, and smiled with joy. I can't forget the trembling voice of her when she first called me. On the day I first asked her out, she told me there was a place she wanted to go during the day. "If you don't mind, I'll tag along." The place she took me was a casino, not too far away from the watch store. Apparently, there was a sizable tournament happening. These players are the real ones. For the record, I don't gamble. Not cards, no dice, no online stuff, nothing. She looked genuinely happy as she raised the bet, looking like she knows what she's doing. "It feels like a dream, being here with you, Mike." Looking at her sparkling eyes and joyous face, I found myself feeling happy as well. She was unlike any other girls I've met before, and I found myself unsure of how to deal with it. We went to the dinner after she was satisfied with her play. When I took her to a slightly fancy Italian restaurant I had reserved, she seemed a bit nervous. "Excuse me for a moment, I got a text." Her phone kept chiming with new text notifications during dinner. Each time, she would check her phone and reply. I caught a glimpse of the icon of the person texting her, a picture of a rugged-looking guy. Seeing that made me surprisingly irritated. "Boyfriend. He seems worry-prone. Let's finish up and head home." A cold, accusing voice slipped out without my intention. She looked at me, startled. I couldn't see her straight for some reason, so looked away. "Mike, look at me." "Enough. Did you have fun making fun of me?" I knew it sounded petty, but I couldn't stop the words spilling out. I acknowledged that this was indeed jealousy. I was already falling hard for her. "Mike, look at me," prompted again. I reluctantly returned my gaze to her. She thrusts her phone screen in my face with a desperate expression. "It's my brother. My brother is the worrywart." Displayed beneath the icon of the man was the word brother. It seems she has an older brother around my age. She's trying to clear up the misunderstanding. She told me a lot about her brother. They became siblings due to their parents' remarriage, so they aren't related by blood, but he's a warrior and initially opposed our date. He was apparently worried about how our date was going. But he didn't contact you at all during the day. There were no messages from the brother during the day. I didn't think she was lying, but it felt a little off. Well, if he contacted me while I was at the casino, I'd be furious. She says with a smile. I see. Recalling how she was during the day, it made all sense. I was increasingly attracted to her as I was getting to know her personality. Catherine, can we make this into a relationship? I asked her as she was happily eating her final dessert, cake. I was a little nervous about what I'd do if she refused. She gave me a blank look for a moment, then looked at my face. The next moment, she stood up from her chair. Yes, thank you, Mike. She gave me the widest smile I had ever seen on her. No, thank you, Catherine. I felt like I was being led by her pace, but I felt so good, after all. Catherine and I continued to see each other, and 6 months passed. Today, we're planning to visit Catherine's family. Of course, I intend to express my feelings for her and how we vision our future. Catherine's mother, who came out to greet us at the entrance, was a very calm and kind-looking person. It seemed that both her parents and her worrywart brother would be there today. I fixed my shirt and walked into the living room. I could see her father sitting deep in the sofa and her brother standing next to him. The moment I saw her brother, I froze for an instant. There was a person from the past I didn't want to remember. I was in shock. Catherine looked into me with a worried look. Mike, you're Mike Harper, aren't you? Catherine's brother, Robert, raised his voice in surprise. He was the last person I could ever face in my life. The one person who knew the past I least wanted Catherine to know about. I started to break out in cold sweat. I was born in Germany and moved back to the States when I was in grade 7. At first, I had a hard time fitting into the school. The persistent bullying instigated by the girls in my class deeply wounded me, who was just a regular vulnerable teenager. It was Catherine's brother who helped me out. Robert was the only one who was kind to me, who was being excluded by the class. I betrayed such a kind classmate. The target switched from me to Robert, who was protecting me. That's how I got released from being the target. And I abandoned kind Robert. I joined the other classmates and bullied him. If I didn't, I would be left out again. It was fear that led me to betray Robert. In the end, whether this was the cause or not, Robert was not there after the summer vacation. He and his family had moved, and Robert got transferred to another school for the new semester. I had not seen Robert since then, until this day. I'm sorry, Robert, I just can't find the words to say. I wanted to run away from this situation and turned on my heels. I thought I would just run away. If Catherine finds out what I did, she would be sad and very disappointed at me. I don't think I can stand it. Mike, what's the matter? As I brushed off her hand and headed for the door, Robert's voice reached my back. Are you going to run away again? Is that all you can handle? Robert's words made me stop in my tracks. I wondered what I would lose if I ran away from here. I know I would lose Catherine. At the same time, I felt like I would lose something very important as a person. I closed my eyes tightly and motivated myself. Then once again, I turned around and showed my face in front of Robert. What should I do? I muttered, like a child. Robert smiled in astonishment at my behavior. Don't be bound by such old things. I was a little surprised, but such coincidences happen, I guess. He chuckled and lightly tapped my shoulder, just like he used to. Catherine looked on blankly, unable to understand what was happening. Robert explained to Catherine that we were classmates in school and had not seen each other since he moved away. Catherine looked surprised and glanced back and forth between Robert and me. Well then, there's nothing to worry about. The guys were friends, right? That's a good thing, isn't it? Catherine, looking happy, gave Robert a hug around his neck. I sat properly on the floor again and greeted their parents. I recognize that greeting to you all might be delayed, but I am Catherine's boyfriend, and we're in a serious relationship. I hope that we can get along and that she and I can continue to nurture our bond. Catherine's father gently touched my shoulder as I bowed my head to the floor in greeting. Lift your head. It's been a while, hasn't it? I'm glad to see you're well. When we were in grade 7, I had been treated to dinner at Robert's house a few times. Robert's dad must have remembered me from that time. I was worried about who Catherine would bring, but if it's you, I'm fine. But I abandoned Robert, I unintentionally said to her father, who was smiling at me gently. Does he hold no grudges against me for abandoning his son? You know your own weaknesses and faults. That's what makes a person grow kinder with time. Hearing those words, I felt tears welling up in my eyes. The kind and open minds that Robert and Catherine have must be the result of the heritage from this man. I thought, I wanted to become someone like him who can forgive mistakes by others. Robert had told me that the move during summer break wasn't due to anything that happened at school. Apparently, his biological mother's health had worsened and she was to be transferred to a different hospital. Knowing she wouldn't recover, the family had moved to be with her until the end. I decided to make a prayer in front of her picture in the living room. As I was silently praying, Robert chuckled next to me. I guess Mom arranged this. Catherine is still in college, so we plan to start preparing for the wedding as soon as she graduates. Excuse me, a year has passed since Catherine and I started dating. This is my first time stepping into her apartment. She wanted to experience living alone for her final year of college, so Catherine rented an apartment. Our relationship has been going pretty well, but we're under the watchful eye of Robert. I was convinced that our relationship was not progressing because of him. I opened the door and stepped into a room. The room was an absolute spectacle. Posters of Casino and the archive of card player magazines decorated the space, and I could spot so many notebooks and memos with her handwriting on it, traces of her studies for the advanced strategies. Has any other man been in here? I whispered to her in a deliberately hushed voice. She blushed and giggled shyly. Shaking her head, she smiled and said, "You're the first." Her small palm squeezed my fingertips tightly. "Oh, wait, you're not the first. Robert came over to eat yesterday," Catherine exclaimed as she had suddenly remembered it. "No, I'd rather you not count that." I looked around worriedly, wondering if Robert had installed surveillance cameras. Seeing my reaction, Catherine laughed. After a good laugh, she shared a little secret with me. "You know, when I first met you, I bet that you would fall for me. I was confident in my gambling skills. From now on, whenever I get lost in my life, she would be my guide," Catherine confidently proclaimed. "As long as she is by my side, I'll never be lost in life." Since I started dating her, my reputation at work has changed. It seems I've finally graduated from competent but a jerk. How did you find it? Subscribing to the channel really motivates us to create more content. See you in the next video.